This summer I made a brief visit to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Many artifacts caught my eye, of course, but there's one that I'd like to talk about today, along with its context of being used to conduct an aerial survey of Manhattan and part of neighboring Bronx in 1921. Listed here are the credits where I got further information for this overview. This is the artifact, the Fairchild K-3B. It's an early aerial camera with the advancement of having an internal shutter system and an intervalometer, meaning the device could be set to take pictures at a regular time interval without a person needing to intervene. Its creator was a man named Sherman M. Fairchild. He started a company based on this aerial camera, and he was also the son of one of the founding members of what became IBM. The camera was ready in 1921, and soon Fairchild was doing aerial photography work in the New York area. Let's look at this aerial survey in a little more detail. The size is hard to judge, but I'd say the camera would fit into a cubic foot or so. Here you see it mounted in a ring and frame system with a viewfinder attached in the foreground. The airplane that Fairchild used was a Fokker D-7, a surplus World War I German biplane. That happens to have been one of the models flown by the guy shown in his flying suit. His name was Hermann Goering. Enough said about him. The technique for the survey was to fly the plane as level and constant speed as possible at about 10,000 feet altitude, while the camera clicked away. The bottom right photo shows the resulting mosaic of 100 photos that were taken during that run on August 4th, 1921. There is so much information in this resulting map, and it's fun to just zoom in and look at details of the city at the time. But one question stood out to me, so to speak. What was the tallest building at that time? Well, this is it. It's called the Woolworth Building, and it still stands in Manhattan. It was the tallest building in New York City and the tallest building in the world from its completion in 1913 until 1930. It was commissioned by Frank W. Woolworth, who was the founder of the retail enterprise by that name and the five and dime stores associated. The building's architect was named Cass Gilbert, and apparently Woolworth challenged Gilbert to make the tower as tall as he could. Subsequently, that ended up being 792 feet above the ground. This picture was taken right around the same time as the aerial survey. In addition to the Woolworth building, standing out from its surroundings, we can see the post office building in front of it. That building is gone today, but the nearby City Hall building in the foreground survives. Now let's zoom in on the 1921 aerial survey mosaic to see if we can locate the Woolworth building. Top right shows the overall survey, and the yellow box within bounds the picture on the left, the southern tip of Manhattan Island. That picture contains a second yellow rectangle, and within that we zoom in on the bottom right to see the same buildings, the Woolworth building, the triangular post office building below it, and the City Hall building. There's little indication of height in the aerial photos due to the altitude of the airplane. We get the feel of a vintage Google Maps satellite photo. The aerial shots from 10,000 feet are high enough to give that top-down view and avoids taller buildings obscuring nearby shorter ones too much. Although the relatively long shadow of the Woolworth building on its right indicates that it's relatively tall. What does this area look like today? Well, I didn't find the same angle to compare these two photographs, but they are helpful to give us an idea. The lower black and white photo here shows the Woolworth building toward the right of the skyline, standing out above all the others. We can also see the Brooklyn Bridge coming in from the left and heading into the center of Manhattan Island. In the upper modern color picture, Woolworth is a monster tucked into a sea of monsters where the yellow oval appears. Though it no longer stands out as obviously as in the older photo, it does remain one of the 100 tallest buildings in the USA. Today I've taken one artifact of the thousands in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., asked only one in an endless series of potential questions about it, and dug into just one result that stems from its story. I urge you to check out that aerial survey photo map. Pick your favorite spot in Manhattan and see what it looked like in the autumn of 1921, now more than 100 years ago. Also, if you can get to DC, check out the Air and Space Museum. It's currently undergoing renovation. Even so, it was a fantastic visit and surely will look even better when the renovation is completed. Keep being curious.